Welcome to the Nametags chat, One Revolution Nametags chat. Today, we have my good friend, Erik Kondo on. Erik is, to categorize Erik is a bit of a challenge. He's an athlete. He's a thinker. He's an inventor. He's a tweaker. He's not tweaker in that sense, I guess. I'm not allowed to say that, I guess, but likes to tweak
How
and
about
change
a hacker?
things and stuff.
I'm a hacker. How's that?
You're a hacker.
I'm fine with hacking. Yeah.
Hacking, exactly. But no, he's a guy who takes things and flips them on their head. And what I was thinking about as I was putting this whole thing together, we have a school presentation with One Revolution called Nametags. And Donna Volpitta, who works with me and created the program, came up with what she calls the 4 S's of resilience. The first one's about self. And the question is, there are questions we can ask ourselves when things are difficult. Am I a victim or am I a survivor? The situation, is it overwhelming or a challenge? Support, am I alone or part of a team? And do I have one strategy or many? And I was thinking about talking to you and thinking, wow, like you cover all of those. I mean, you are the guy who's looking at every single situation going, I am most certainly a survivor. The situation is a challenge. We're going to find a way to make something really cool about it. I'm not alone. I mean, you have somebody that you work with on the technical side, creating your things, and then you have a variety of different strategies to get to do what you want to do. So for the audience out there, to take a step back, I first met Erik back in 1993. He came to a ski camp that Sarah, Will, and I were doing, a mono ski camp in Vail, Colorado. And we did the camp during the day, then we had a video session, and then Erik and I were going to go to the gym to go work out. And we left the hotel, and it was one of those hotels that was kind of like a horseshoe hotel, and across the way was where the gym was. And we went out the door, and we're confronted by a flight of stairs. And I said, oh, okay, well, we can turn around, we can go back the other way. And Erik was like, no, this is totally cool. We can go up these stairs. And he went up the stairs as easily as anybody walks up the stairs. I mean, just in complete
Not quite
control.
that easily.
Well, not to you, but to me, it looked completely that easily. And the thing is, you grab onto, and we'll show a video of it, grabbed onto the railing with one hand, and then that same wheel, so the wheel opposite of the hand, so left hand to right wheel, and pulled and pushed and went up them so easily and said, look, this is great. And I remember I made it up. I think I made it up almost to the top. And then I made the fateful error, because you start running out of railing at the top. So you can't reach back as far as you want to. So I grabbed onto the railing with 2 hands, and my chair scooted out from underneath me and rolled and tumbled to the bottom. And you kind of looked at me from the top and went, well, your only choice is to go back down and come up and do it again. And so to me, that climbing stairs was something that I thought was so cool, because you do it in such a clean and controlled way. You've done the 51 story.
Yeah, there was a tower in Atlanta. At the time, it was the IBM building, and it's 50 stories. And I did that as part of a fundraiser back in the day when I was living in Atlanta. So, I found climbing stairs, doing, fortunately over the years, I have to do a lot less. So, but certainly I did a lot more when I was younger, and it was certainly, fairly practical, not, and I would need a really good railing, but it certainly came in handy.
How did you get good at it? Did you just say, I'm going to get good and go practice, or how did it work?
So first of all, I didn't come up with the technique. I learned it from somebody else. This guy showed up when I was in rehab back in '84. And, at this time, I think I might have even been on a gurney. And he just demonstrated it a few steps, literally as he was leaving. So I got an idea what it was all about, but I really didn't understand the technique. I got good at it when I did semester in London. One of the things when I went to London, I said, look, I don't care where I go, just put me in an accessible dorm. So what do? They put me in a dorm that had like 6 steps to literally just to get in the front door of the dorm, So, and these are outside steps, and it's London,
This is
so
London where it's wet and rainy. And,
right, exactly. So, and then, so there was those steps that I was dealing with all the time. But then really In order to get around London, you have to do tubes. And for the most part, you're talking about lots of escalators and lots of stairs. So, in doing and being in London for a semester, I really had to do stairs all the time. So I would say that's pretty much where I kind of perfected the technique and got pretty good at it.
Out of necessity.
Yeah, out of necessity, right. Yeah, so this is, this is actually a relatively easy set of stairs because they're not that steep. But this is, again, this method I call the railing side wheel control method, that you're grabbing, it's the wheel and the arm that you're using are all on the same side. And if you can see that again, it's really important to twist your body as much as you can so that you're trying to put your arm, so I'm bringing my two arms together. I'm getting a lot of lift out of my right arm. So it's not just pulling with my left. There's really a lot of driving coming from that right arm. And that's really important. And of course, with this, you have to have your chair set up so that you can balance in a wheelie pretty easily. So, it's definitely, it's a combination of strength and technique, and it works. I will say it's much more practical. In general, if you have somebody who's pulling from behind, they don't have to be that strong. So what's nice about this technique is if you're out with one person, they can stand behind you sideways and pull a little bit, and you can efficiently go up the stairs, and it's a lot safer. Because instead of having one person try to just pull you and you're not holding on to the railing, and if they slip, you're going down. In this way, if somebody slips, you're holding on to the railing. It might be a little bit messy, but you're not going to take that big tumble. And like you talked about the tumble that you took, right? You didn't tumble, your chair tumbled.
My chair tumbled, yes.
Right? You don't want to tumble. If something's going to tumble, you want it to be your chair. And as long as you're always holding on the railing, that's not going to happen.
Exactly. And the thing is that, your chair is gonna make it.
Yeah.
But it is the hardest part is always that top part of the railing where you run out of the railing. Absolutely. And you can't reach back as far. As far as you'd like.
A trick.
But the technique, looking at that technique and looking at the strength, and because we went to the gym, and I think you ended up using like the restroom at the gym as well, which was down another floor, and you went back down the stairs and then came up the stairs, and I thought it was pretty impressive. So
I was probably frustrated from doing a crappy job at skiing, and I was like, I can't ski, but at least I can climb stairs. That's probably, I'm guessing that was my frame of mind at the time point. So.
I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. I was just impressed with the stair part of it. So, but it really is a mindset, because the funny thing about looking at that video is that the stairs were right there, and people could say, well, but there's a ramp right on the other side. Like, why don't you take the ramp? But part of it is that you can get to places that are not. That where there aren't a ramp, like where you go to London and you're going up the stairs, and so much of what you've done. You're talking about how like the wheelchairs often are set up for a static environment. Like the curb cuts, sidewalks, paved environment, but that's not the world, right?
Right. I have a whole theory and a whole document on what I call static stability and dynamic stability. And wheelchairs are set up for static stability. And static stability is, when you're not moving, you want to be stable. When you're sitting in a regular chair, you have static stability. When you're moving, you want dynamic stability. And I'm going to bring in skiing. Because I think it's an excellent example of this illustration, right? So when you're skiing, it's all about dynamic stability. The fact that you're moving makes you more stable. Would you agree?
Sure, I agree 100%. Yes.
Right, exactly. So you need so in this case, your movement, your speed, your turning, all of that stuff is what's creating dynamic stability. But that being said, if you're a mono skier, right? So a lot of the static stability depends on your level of injury. Or if you're an amputee, or whatever it might be. It's not an injury, but level of trunk control. And so people are going to need different levels of static stability. In this case, it's your seat, the height of your seat, It's going to be your strapping system. Is it a waist strap only? Is it a chest strap? Is it a shoulder straps? All of those create static stability, right? So you need both of them. But so for someone with a higher level of injury, they need more static stability. So in order to create dynamic stability, right? So think about yourself for a minute. So you have a chest strap, right?
I do. I have a
Okay.
chest strap, and actually, it's kind of funny that you're talking about this, because the way I describe to people how I ski, and this leads into exactly what you're talking about, is that it's a controlled fall. That I'm
Yeah.
falling, I pick myself up, make the turn, falling, pick myself up. It's kind of
Right.
yeah.
So here's a question for you. So right before the race, your worst enemy sneaks in and cuts away your chest strap. What happens to your skiing?
It would be diminished significantly.
Right,
Yes.
right. So in this case, so in this case, you need that static stability to create the dynamic stability, right?
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
Another scenario. So they undo your chest strap and put it up 5 inches higher. You get on the ski. You don't know. What happens?
I couldn't make a turn.
Because
Because I was put into an entirely different position. I mean, it'd be a huge challenge to
and you're
make a
locked
turn,
in,
because
right? You're
I
locked
was
in. You
locked.
can't.
Yep, exactly, because I was locked in. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So now you have too much static
Yep.
stability. So there's really every person has a happy medium. There's a point. It can't be too much and it's too little. And when you have that exact amount that works for you, that creates the greatest dynamic stability. So that's kind of the whole point of this, is to understanding that you need both in order to create the most mobility. It's not one or the other. It's really figuring out what works for you. It's going to be different for me, it's for you, and everybody else. So that's kind of the whole point of trying to get people to think about those two different aspects.
Right, because it's personal preference, but then it's also it's also the level of injury, and then it is also probably how willing you are to to be uncomfortable
Right.
in your position. I mean, I think there's some people who are willing to be a little less comfortable. I mean, like for me in skiing, angulation is the biggest thing. If I can get that angulation, but if I'm completely locked in, I feel relatively secure sitting there. But the dynamic stability that you're talking about, I'm not able to get my ski on edge, which creates the dynamic stability that you're talking about. Because when I create that platform, when I have that ski on edge, and then I'm actually in a controlled position, and a controlled position with regard to a lot of things, with regard to the turn, but also with regard to any terrain or any bumps or any of those kinds of things. I'm in a much stronger position as a result of that dynamic position.
Right. And what I think is interesting is so we understand this. Everyone seems to intuitively understand this in terms of skiing, right? I mean, it is really pretty well
Sure.
understood for the most part. But then you
Sure.
take a wheelchair, right, which is really kind of is really the same thing, and people are like, I don't get it. And what I say to people is that, look, and you just mentioned this, that there is a lot of times an inverse relationship between comfort and mobility, right? In other words, what's more comfortable than a lazy boy couch, right? I mean, come on, you sit on the couch, stretch your feet out, right? It is super comfortable. You can't move.
You're not going anywhere.
If your chair is really that comfortable, it's probably set up in a way that it's not as mobile as it could be. Because to me, a well set up chair with your center of balance and so forth is not going to be super comfortable to sit in all the time. So there is a trade-off. And I think what happens is that people are thinking only in terms of comfort and not in terms of mobility, because effectively, the medical industry, everybody thinks about static stability, not dynamic stability in terms of wheelchairs, which is just a different way of thinking about it.
Right. And your contention is that it's a difference between It's actually it's moving, right? You know, I mean, so static is that we are staying in one place versus actually moving and performance and those kinds of things being on the top of our list. You know, our chair allowing us to move and be dynamic.
Exactly. And even if you're moving, so if you think about static stability, it doesn't really matter so much on a flat surface like a hospital floor, which is perfectly smooth and easy to roll on, right?
Right.
You know, if your chair, if we stabilized your chair by pulling your wheels back, right? So that you couldn't really do a wheelie, we threw in some wheelie bars, right? Gave you some armrests, you know, all of that, all those kind of things. It wouldn't really hurt your performance in a hospital setting, right? You wouldn't notice it. Now we're going to take you outside, you know, to your lake house that you were talking to me earlier about, where probably there's some kind of hills there that are steep, you know, and there's bumps and there's
Dirt
rocks and there's
roads
divots,
yep.
you know, and all of a sudden you're screwed because you just can't pop a wheelie when you want to. You got too much weight on your front casters. They dig in and you flip over, right? Like there's a steep hill that you want to wheelie down. You can't wheelie down it, you know, because you got wheelie bars, like all of those things. So the mobility really matters, you know, in certain environments. So if you stay in a an accessible environment, it's not really going to matter. But when you push those limits and go to other areas, then then how your chair is set up and your ability to manage the chair really becomes important.
It is. It is. Yeah. And so let's transition into some of the vehicles that you've developed as well, because you spent a lot of time in a wheelie on, like, say, your longboard. All right. So this is you
This is me on
on
a
a
land
trail,
board.
I'm assuming by your house. Okay.
Well, I drove there, but yeah. So this is on a
Okay.
I'm on a land board there. That was a pretty cool trail. That was 4 miles from where I parked my car. So the land board is pretty good for getting around on trails like this.
Okay. So questions about this. So you have power assist on this, or you have a
Yeah,
motor
yeah. Well,
that
it's
you're
not power.
running.
It is 100% power, and I have a remote in my right hand. So this is a remote controlled electric skateboard, land board. It's got 2 motors and 7-inch wheels. There's some suspension there, which enables it to get over that kind of terrain. It's a giant skateboard with big wheels and 2 motors. So, which is what you need for any kind of terrain that's rough, and that was somewhat rough. So.
And the part that you're doing is that you are so by going back and forth on your wheelie, you are controlling it, you're turning it
Right.
left and right.
Exactly. So in a lot of ways, a skateboard is very similar to a snowboard in that, except for the torque action. So, you have toe pressure and heel pressure, right? So in the wheelie, you have forward pressure and you have back pressure. And what you're doing nothing other than changing your center of balance. So when you have toe pressure or forward pressure, then you're going to turn to the right. And when you have back pressure, you're going to turn to the left. So that is the mechanism for controlling a skateboard. Is really forward and backwards pressure, which you can do with a wheelie. And of course, speed and acceleration and deceleration is done with your remote control that you're holding in your hand. So I use my finger to control that.
And will that actually stop? Do you have brakes as well,
Yes,
or is it
yes.
kind of like you
Yeah,
do?
no, you can stop. Yeah. So when I first started, I was using non-motorized versions, which was I just took a regular longboard and put brackets on it. But the thing about it is, as a practical matter, it's not so practical because number one, you can't stop, and you have to do it. You have to find a hill that's not too fast, because if it's too fast, you're going to die because you can't stop and slow down. So it wasn't that practical, but it was a great way to learn. But once I recognized that, this actually could be functional, you just got to put a motor on it. And electric skateboarding is a thing. So it just it worked out very well. My first versions I had to make. This version I bought and modified, but there are still some customized aspects of that board.
And so in the customized, you have two metal rails that go down the side of the board that basically
Right.
kind of keep
I,
you in a
I
wheelie.
yeah, I call them wheel wells. They're basically four 5-inch brackets, 5-inch long, an inch and a half high, and separated by 10 inches. That is the size of a wheel well you need for a standard 25-inch wheel. And you just so in order to get on there, you're popping a wheelie, you're jumping up, you're landing in the wheel well, right? And because of that, it holds your wheels. It doesn't lock it, permanently, but there's enough resistance there that you can create forward and back pressure. So if you press too far, you roll off and then you crash. So that's the thing. There's a happy medium. It's like, you're on there, but you're not on there that tight. Future versions might have, locking your wheels in. I can see that having a lot of potential, particularly for a land board where you need a lot more torque. And again, if you think about, it's the same thing as skiing, right? If you're skiing on a perfectly carpeted surface, you barely use your outriggers, right? Like you could just barely touch them down. That's like being on a long board on a smooth path. But if you're on, choppy terrain, you're working hard, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you end up, or when you're going slowly,
Yeah.
when there are a whole bunch of people at the bottom of the hill and you're trying to avoid everybody, that's when. So
So
this is the
this
skateboard that we have.
exactly. This is just to be technical, this is a long board.
A long
So
board.
most people don't bring a long board to a skateboard park, but this is the long board. I actually have a skateboard. It's shorter, but what I found was I have more stability. This is this whole static stability. I can go faster on this long board than I could on the skateboard, and I needed the speed in order to be able to do those ramps and so forth.
Okay.
The other thing is I have a special truck on the front of that thing called a surf adapter, which allows it to turn much sharper than a regular longboard. So it had, so that's really important to have the maneuverability. You in the skate park, you need to have maneuverability. Otherwise, you're just going to launch yourself. If you can't turn, you're going to launch yourself off a ramp that you didn't want to do. It's like you can imagine skiing, right? And you're in a half pipe and you wanted to turn and you didn't, then, where would you go?
Right.
Yeah.
Where would you land is the question.
Yes, where would you land, right?
Yeah. So one of the other, so just can I draw an analogy just on the on your rails? And it's kind of like when you pour the salt out, right? You pour the salt onto the table, and you can balance the salt shaker on an angle as opposed to straight up and down. I mean, this is kind of what you're doing, right? Where it's sort of supporting you so you're upright.
I'm not sure about the salt shaker thing. It sounds like a bar thing that you do. I don't know. The rails are wheel chocks effectively. And when your wheels are chalked, then if you think about it, because I'm assuming you're in your chair right now, right?
Yep,
if your wheels are chalked, then what is your seat other than something that hinges back and forth, right?
Right.
You think about it, right?
Right. You're locked in. It's only one moving part instead of, yes.
Right. So now your wheelie doesn't depend on you moving the wheels like it typically does, but it's still the same balance. You have to have forward balance and you have to have backward balance. So it's really the same thing. So those wheel rails really enable the balancing, enable the chair to balance. Now, a lot of people, I have gotten a lot of shit over the years because I've been doing this for about 5 years, and people telling me it's wrong, and Eric, why are you going sideways? You should be going forwards and all this stuff. And the thing is, this whole system is based on going sideways. It's based on, my wanting to go sideways, me wanting to do it in the wheelie, and also me not wanting to, I want to have my chair at all times. Like I get off it, I have my chair. You can
people take this to a restaurant, go have lunch, and
it doesn't matter, right? You can be like everyone else. Right. You can hop on it and hop off it, literally in seconds. And so I wanted something completely different, and that's kind of how all these other things that that you have video of, the skimboarding, the hoverboard and so forth. These are all based on me trying to think about the different things that the different mobility devices you can control through the use of a wheelie as the primary control method, and incorporating balance.
Exactly. So Dave Gillespie actually anticipated my next question, and talking about, is it hard to hold a wheelie for that long? I mean, this gets to be a bit of a workout, right? I mean, you do have a motor, but it's got to be a workout.
Right. So I mean, that's a good question. It is a workout to some degree, depending on how long you're going for. So yes, and the difficult terrain, for instance, for the land boarding, you're working a little bit harder, right? I get off it to stretch out my back and so forth. And also, it can be a little bit stressful. I mean, I've ridden my land board over 40 miles on this really long bike ride. And it was multiple hours.
In one stretch.
Yeah, it was multiple hours, but it was a thing, So, but the other thing is, it's nice to get off and relax your mind, because particularly if you're going, fairly fast, it can be a little bit stressful. If you're on a road and you're going fast, you're just waiting for that pothole that you're going to hit. So one of the things I notice is that I'm actually, if I move, and I'm going to go back to skiing again for you, right? Like if you ski and you turn, you're more relaxed. If you just try to go straight, it's like you're just waiting for that thing to hit you and you're going to fall, But once you start moving, you get into the flow. And so I found that I'm mentally more relaxed when I'm moving and steering back and forth, as opposed to just trying to hold it straight. So,
because you can't really go straight. I mean, straight is harder than turning, probably.
No, straight is not, except that you have to hold it really still. And what I'm saying is that there's more relaxation in movement than there is in being static. Because when you're static, you're just waiting to hit the bump, and you go from not moving to hitting that bump. And again, if you think of skiing, like once you're going and moving and you're into the flow, you don't really care about little bumps, right? Because you're just like dealing with it. But if you're just waiting for that bump, then you're just like, oh my God, is this going to be the one that knocks me over? So movement makes it more relaxing than just trying to hold it static.
That's and so that was the other part of his question is it easier once you are moving? And it is easier
Absolutely.
Once you're moving, and once you're
just like
once you are
like a ski and a bicycle. Absolutely. It's definitely easier when you're moving. Yes. One of the hardest parts is getting on.
Yeah. No, unfortunately we don't have the video. We didn't take the video of you getting on. I did see the video of you doing that, where you described it's like getting up a curb, where you sort of, and people would do that with their bikes, right? Where they get the front wheel up and they roll up, and that's effectively what we do in order to get up a curb. It's just a little bit shorter wheelbase for us. So it's a little bit, timing is a little bit more precise. But in order to do this, you're getting on, but you're also getting onto it and staying in a wheelie as you're going up on a curb.
Right. So the trick of getting on, and that definitely takes practice. And I'm not one for getting on, regardless of how many times I do it. I can never just always get on reliably. So you're popping a wheelie and you're popping on there. And then yes, if you go too fast, you're going to overshoot. So and again, it's a little tricky because when you overshoot, you're also, if you can think like once you jump on that thing, you're a little bit trapped. But if you're trapped, and then your front of your chair drops down. So you know what happens when the back of your chair is up and your front of your chair drops down, like you launch, right? So there's just really, again, it's just a matter of practice. For the land board, I worked with MIT to create these little ramps that come down that make it a little bit easier.
Okay.
And the reason for that was getting up on, as you know, jumping a curb from cement is much easier than jumping a curb from grass, right? You can just never get fast enough. that's why I needed these little ramps for the land board, because I'm pretty much always leaving from grass or dirt or gravel. So I couldn't really generate much speed.
And
So
it's a
that's,
little bit higher, right? Those
yeah, and
wheels are a little bit bigger.
exactly. It's a little bit higher and so forth. So that's how we came up with that. But the bottom line is, it's still, you're running at the thing, you're jumping on, and you're just trying to stop and just hold your position, and then get your balance, and then get started. Now, I will say that electric board is easier than when I started with the non-electric board, because I would start on a hill. So as soon as I jumped on it, the thing would move, and which would mean I wouldn't be settled. I wouldn't really be settled, and it would start to move. This is probably one of the reasons why I'm sure that I felt probably 100, if not 200 times learning how to do this, so it didn't take me, it took me a long time. Now there's a guy doing it right now, Evan, who got a hold of me. He's a younger guy, he's a T10, and he's flying. And he learned this like really quick, but I will say that I felt a lot,
What kept you going when you kept falling? I mean,
because
what was the passion, or what was the?
So before I started this, I've always been interested in balancing things. I have a two-wheeled hand cycle that is, from '93. So basically when we met, right? So that's an old bike, and I've always liked balancing, and I think this is probably why you like skiing so much, right? Because sure. And I'll ask you this: so, what is it that you like about skiing?
The biggest thing is the feeling of making a turn. I mean, it's just that so many elements go into it, but it's that feeling of everything coming together in the turn. It's a sense of purity. It's artistry. It's
okay,
that,
right. Which is a sense of flow and balance, right?
Yep, exactly.
So you like that. So let me ask you this: what if you had little outriggers out while you were skiing, so you couldn't fall over? Would making that turn be as fun?
It probably would not be. No.
Yeah, exactly.
It wouldn't be as pure.
It wouldn't be as pure because when you make a turn that's balanced, you're weightless, right? If you think about it, the way you're weightless, because if you go to one side, you fall to one side. You go to the other side, you fall to the other side. But right in the middle, there's that one spot and there's no drag, right? Now, when you're in a wheelchair, to me, there's drag all the time. When I say drag, when you go down, when you turn in your chair, does it feel like skiing?
No.
No. There's like, this is what I mean by this drag of turn, right? When you're skiing, you just float around that corner. Well, it's the same thing with skateboarding. And so there is no feeling of drag. It's the same thing with the two-wheeled hand cycle when you turn. The reason I wanted to do this is because I knew that I wanted something that was balance related. And I was experimenting with all this wheelie stuff, but it just wasn't that interesting, And then all of a sudden, I didn't come up with the idea of the skateboarding. Antonio from Germany, I saw a video of him doing it on a regular longboard, and I was like, that's interesting. So, and that's what, then I was like, I gotta figure this out. So what I'm saying is, to me, it's the feeling, the ability to balance creates that feeling that makes it fun. And I wanted to achieve that.
So you were back to being like a little kid, like learning how to ride your bike. Like I want this feeling. I want to be able to ride my bike. I don't care how many times I have to fall. I'm going to figure out how to do it. And which is great. And it's always in some ways hard to be the pioneer, right? To be the first one, because so many people are saying, Erik, you can't do this. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I will say that it's less so you can't do it. It's more that, Erik, that's so stupid. Why are you doing it this way? Why don't you do it this way? It's never going to work. It's dangerous. It's this, it's that. I will tell you that I've been honestly surprised about the number of negative stuff that I've gotten. When I did, it's the same thing. I created a snowboard system, and because I thought, well, this is cool. Why don't I try this? To me, this is all, a lot of this is just an intellectual experience. Can I make something that works? Will it ever be as good as a monoski? Absolutely not. Does it matter? Who cares? I wanted to see if it worked. I wanted to see if the physics would work. Could I make it work? How would it feel? And at the same time, my daughter was snowboarding. So we went to, the bunny hills together, and I could actually understand snowboarding and explain it to her. Right? None of this would have, which is completely different than had I gone with her in my monoski. And I've had multiple people comment, why don't I just get in a monoski? That's dangerous. It's this, it's that, And to me, what I don't understand is, why is it that wheelchair users, we have so few recreational outlets? Why are people saying, no, you shouldn't do that? Do even less, And to me, it makes no sense. I don't understand it. But
so we're going to look at, I think is this the hoverboard, or is this, oh no, we got it's a snowboard. All right.
Yeah. That was literally the first time I tried it, the first day.
Wow. And that's one where you don't have a brake.
No brake.
Your brake is you have to stop the same way that everybody else does.
You got to make the turn.
Oh.
And I've experimented with different versions of this. I could do a lot more with this. My biggest problem is, you really need a bunch of ABs to help you out to do this kind of stuff, And I don't really ski that much. I ski like 5-6 times a year. So now when I go skiing, I'm just going skiing. But a lot of trying to make stuff, it's helpful, if you got people to help you and who are into it, and depending where you are, that's just the reality of stuff.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. That's and you end up learning something, because it's not like you're applying a similar concept to a variety of different environments.
Exactly. And they're related. And that's the thing, because a carved turn on a skateboard is similar to a carved turn on a ski, which is similar to a carved turn on a snowboard. And they work with, as you said, in the turn, it's about the balance of speed and turn radius, right? And how much angulation you get. All of those factors come together. So there's multiple factors which makes that turn. And that's what's cool about it. And if it was really easy, then it's like, it's easy to get in a car and drive around, but it's kind of boring unless you're, riding a race car. Once you're able to drive and turn, it's not that exciting,
Right. No, exactly. No, it's useful. That's pretty much it.
Exactly. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, and I think this would be a great to bounce this off you, is about the different aspects of the brain. Now, I know that you're the woman that you have helped develop, Donna, who helped develop the name tags. And she's got her own little brain model. And my model is pretty much completely compatible with what she's got going on from what I've seen in a couple of videos. So I'm just going a little bit different direction in that I'm looking at brain processing for performance. And there's lots of different models on the brain, right? And we all know models are all wrong. They're just teaching methods. So one of the nice models that I've seen talks about system 1 and system 2. Are you familiar with the terminology system 1 and system 2?
Yes, to a certain extent. I'm not an expert.
All right, so system 2 is your cognitive brain, like our prefrontal cortex, it's our thinking brain. System 1 is that brain that processes things that in a number of ways, but one of the things that it does for the purpose of performance is it can do things really quickly, right? So if you think about skiing, a lot of people think about, say, okay, the ultimate thing is no mind, right? Like you're not thinking, right?
Sure.
So that is one way to think about it, but I like to take it a little bit beyond that, because people think, okay, the ultimate is to not think about what you're doing, right? Now, let me ask you this question, okay? And we're going to use ski racing for a minute. So it's going to depend. So the performance really depends on what we're dealing with. Okay. So maybe when you're, say if you're dancing by yourself and the environment doesn't change, you might need to think less with your conscious mind. But I'm going to ask you, when you're ski racing, are you thinking?
You know, the intention is to do, my intention was always to do all of my thinking in training. That if I'm thinking while I'm racing, I mean, there certainly are times that I'm thinking. The ultimate is to have, I consider it like teaching my body instinct, so that I know how to react in certain situations.
So you're teaching system one. Okay, so
right.
What you're saying is, okay, you're doing your thinking and training, and you're training system one. And a huge part of skiing is all system one, because when you're skiing, you have to react really fast, faster than you can think. Same thing for skateboarding, same thing for mountain biking and so forth, right? So we all agree on that. But I'm taking I want you to think about this. When you're skiing and you mentioned this in one of your videos, you're talking about when you were learning, right? When you're skiing, you're looking down multiple gates, right?
Sure. Yeah, usually
Why?
2 gates ahead.
Why?
You know, part of it is that's where you're going, but the other part of it is that technically it helps you where you don't want to look where you're going, because then everything follows your eyes. So if I look to that next gate, then my head follows, my shoulders follow, and my shoulders then are not pointed down the hill. They're actually pointed across the hill.
Okay.
So it helps. It's a technique trick.
Yes, but I'm going to add to this, and you're probably not recognizing you're doing this. When you're looking down the hill and racing or whatever it is on train, you're doing all sorts of math calculations. You are looking at that. You're taking in consideration your speed. There's bumps. How fast can I hit this bump? How will it launch me? Will it not? You're constantly making calculations and adjustments. So you're doing a lot of thinking. And this is my point here. There's 2 things going on. There's system one that is monitored, that is manipulating the ski so you don't fall over, right? But system 2 is navigating. You're looking at gates. You're looking at your speed, right? You're
sort of a macro kind of thing.
All of this stuff, right? So you have to think. So this idea that you don't think you have to be able to do both. It's the same thing. So if you're free skiing and you're going down, right? And there's other skiers around, you're calculating how fast are they going? Are they going to turn? There's a bump. How fast do I go if I hit that bump? Am I going to launch 20 feet? Am I only going to go 5 feet, right? There's all sorts of mathematical formulas going on in your head. You're calculating, you're thinking all the time. And the thing is, if you can use your system 2 to do that kind of navigating and not need system 2 tied up with system 1, then you can really do a lot better. Now, when you're learning how to ski, everything is focused on not falling over, right? At your feet or 10 feet in front of you, right? So a person like that is using their system 2 is tied up completely with the aspect of skiing, right? And what is one of the problems that they have?
When
they're thinking about what they're skiing. How does thinking about what you're skiing mess you up?
Oh, it messes you up. I mean, one, it's exhausting because you're in conscious thought all the time.
Right.
But 2, I think it really gets more toward indecision too, right? You're thinking, you're like, okay, am I here? Am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? And I think you put yourself in a more challenging place. I'm not sure if that's the right answer.
No, it is. So one of the things is system 2 is too slow. System 1 just does. Okay. So when you're good enough and you've trained your system 1, it just does. System 2. So you're going to say, but Eric, didn't you just say about the navigating? Now these are 2 different things. One is manipulating the ski, dealing with the not with the actual functions of turning and not falling over, and dealing with the bumps and so forth. The other is navigating. Right. It's different. Your conscious brain is too slow to steer the ski, so to speak. Right? Like if you hit a bump, you've reacted. If you hit a patch of ice, you react before you even think about it, and you're over it, right? And you're like, oh shit, that was a patch of ice back there. Glad I didn't fall, right? And you have already something handled it. That's system one. So system one is amazing in its ability to react very quickly. And again, it's the same thing: skateboard, mountain biking, whatever it is. You must train your system one. But the problem is, the problem with system two is you're a thinker, right? And what is one of the things that we think about? How does thinking, besides the indecision, what else is that emotional aspect that destroys skiers?
Oh, I mean, the emotional aspect is am I doing it right? Am I doing it well? Am I safe? Am I going to get
expand
hurt?
on the am I. Expand on the am I. It starts with F. What's that word?
F. I'm assuming that is fast. Yeah.
Fear.
Yes. Fear. Fear is a huge part of it, and I think that's the part of thinking that you really want to eliminate from your skiing.
Right.
Really.
Exactly. So fear is an emotion that affects your thinking brain, right? And it makes your thinking brain a lot worse. Now think about this: if your skiing depends on your thinking brain, and you're afraid, what happens to your performance?
It goes down immensely.
It goes to shit, and you like high side and fall and hurt yourself, right?
Sure. Right.
Yeah. Right. So fear. But you don't. So you can eliminate if you have the ability to eliminate your emotion, right? So in other words, what I'm trying to say is fear affects your thinking brain, your system two. It doesn't affect your system one, because your system one just does, right? It just does. So if
That's what it's supposed to do, yeah.
Exactly. So if you're able to make your system one work without depending on your system two, then fear is less likely to affect you. Does that make sense?
No, I think that's a big deal, that fear is less likely to affect, and that's really the ultimate goal for any of these sports. I mean, it's really because the fear is the thing that makes you less aggressive.
Right.
It makes you pull back, right? And so
Exactly.
It makes you stiffen up. And the thing is that then when you're fearful, you're more likely to get hurt than you are, and your fear is trying to keep you from getting hurt.
Right, exactly.
And so it's that sort of conundrum, right?
Right. I completely agree. So a lot of people say, well, how do you deal with fear? So to me, if you think about fear, so I want you to think about when you're skiing. So let's think about the purpose of fear. The purpose of fear is in some ways to keep you safe. It is a warning, right? Fear warns you of a pending danger. Now, how do you experience fear? I think I probably experience it similar to other people. Is you see the future. So we talked about the system two navigating, right? You see dangerous things, and then you think about what might happen, right?
Sure.
So if you're skiing close to a cliff, you're going to see in your head what would happen if you go over that cliff, right? You see these things, because that's what keeps you safe. Now you talk about someone so let's think about kids, if you're a parent and you're walking behind your kid at their young age does not see all the dangers. They don't see the car. They're walking next to there's all sorts of dangerous stuff they literally don't see. But you as the parent walking behind them, wheeling behind them, see all the shit that could happen to them, right? Sure. You envision it happening. Now, that's what keeps people safe, is our ability to imagine the future and imagine what might happen. So fear is a warning. You need fear. The thing is, when you're skiing and you're trying to, go down a trail and so forth, it doesn't do you any good as if every time you see a tree, you see yourself crashing into it, right? So,
Sure.
and then people are like, okay, but then you can't just not think about it, right? Anymore, if you said to me, Eric, just don't think about that sign that says one revolution behind me, right? Now I'm just staring at it all the time. You can't not think about something someone tells you not to think about. What you can do is try to replace the images that you see that are negative with more positive ones, right? So if you're going, skiing, down a steep slope and there's all this different terrains, you could see yourself crashing, or you could see yourself being successful, right? You could imagine how good it's going to feel to hit that jump and land perfectly. So now you start you change your imagery to positive, successful things, which crowd out that space full of the negative stuff. So you can't have an empty head because the negative images flood in. So you have to force them out. You're literally forcing in positive imagery. What that does is helps to control your fear. If you can control your fear, then you don't have those negative cognitive effects from system 2 messing with your system 1.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think you're talking about a few different things, right? I mean, I think that there's a training effect with regard to fear. There's the visualization that you're talking about with regard to fear, seeing yourself being successful. And there's also, I think there's the acknowledgement part of fear too, right? The fear is this sense of self-preservation, this thing
right.
that is going to tell us, hey, this might be really unsafe.
Right.
But you have to be able to say, okay, well, the fear is that thing that is potentially preventing me from doing whatever I want to do. Can I acknowledge whether it's good fear, whether it's bad fear, whether that fear can be a motivation as well, right? It's like, okay, you're telling me I can't do it. You've heard you can't do this a lot. And you're like, okay, well, that seems like a good motivating factor to push ahead and do exactly that. And I think that some of it is the system too, where we're having the time where it doesn't happen in the moment, but we're having the time to think about our fear and have a plan of visualization, have a plan of acknowledging that this is a potential issue. And is that for you with what you've done with all of these different vehicles? Is it does fear play a part in what you're doing? Fear of development, fear of bodily injury, those kinds of fears, fear of embarrassment, that why did you spend so much time on something that was so stupid?
Yeah. So I'm going to say that it's more fear of bodily injury, and in the beginning was more fear of embarrassment. I will say that one of the things that cured me of the fear of embarrassment was when I was first longboarding. So by my house, we had this nice rail to trail, and it goes into Lexington Center, and there's this intersection, Lexington Center. So I got to the intersections, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to wait here on my board till all the cars go and everyone's gone. But of course, every car stopped, and I had to make a little bit of a tricky turn. So, of course, you can imagine, I'm talking about fear and the stress, right? So what is the worst thing you think is going to happen crossing a street? Of course, I dumped. Yeah. And and when there's stopped cars, everybody gets out of their car, right? Like everyone's out, So after I crashed like that, and of course, I'm not worried about getting hurt like at that speed. I was like, well, this is about as embarrassing as it's going to get. So now that I've done this, I really can't do anything more embarrassing. So I can just put that aside. It's like, I'm done with the embarrassment. That was it. And now I can move on to, fear of crashing into stuff, which is, always a realistic possibility. And of course does happen. So,
and you have a helmet and you have elbow pads and knee pads, and
Yes,
you're
I
riding while.
armor up and I strap in just like you'd strap in the monoski. And just like in the monoski, the last thing you want is your leg to fly out, right?
Right.
Because what happens when you roll and your leg flies out? It's broken.
Break it.
It's the same thing. I strap in my feet, I strap in my knees, and I strap in my waist. So I have a nice roll cage. I have motocross knee pads, so that they don't move. They're plastic and they have a bend in it, and then elbow pads and a helmet. So I've taken a lot of tumbles. I've rolled I when I was out and doing that long bike ride in Iowa, I got the speed wobbles. Are you familiar with the speed wobbles?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the speed wobbles are really hard to, once you get to a certain speed and there's vibration and you just start to go back and forth like this. And at that time, since I was going a long trip, I had a knapsack on my back and I had some batteries on my feet, which made me even more unstable. If you think about it, a little bit like a seesaw. So and at that time, I had a longboard with only one motor. Now I have two. One motor means one brake. One brake means that when you hit the brake, it hits one side. So I braked, which induced the speed wobbles. I knew I was screwed, but I already had this planned out in my head because I knew that I already planned out, okay, Eric, if you get the speed wobbles somewhere out on this ride, you're going to ride off the road. You're not, I already pictured what I needed to do. So I got the speed wobbles and there was a biker right behind me and I could hear him going, oh shit, oh shit. So I knew I was like, oh, this must look bad because he's like saying that, Anyhow, so rode off, down a huge embankment, rolled multiple times. But again, this is Iowa, beautiful grass and nothing hard. So it was super dramatic, but, in no way did I get hurt. But I guess my point is, one, preparation beforehand, like have a plan. If you get the speed wobbles, this is your plan, right? I already have thought about that. So, and preparation in having all the equipment and stuff so that I didn't go splatter, So it was a controlled roll, more or less.
Exactly. Let me make one comment and then ask you another question. So Dave Gillespie actually said that, talking about system 1 and system 2, that his music teacher's mantra is that beginners practice so that they won't make mistakes. Masters practice till they can't make mistakes. And I think that's a similar kind of thing to what you're talking about. So with all this stuff you're doing, I mean, your stuff is super exciting. It's a little bit different, and some of that stuff of like, okay, well, what's he doing? I mean, we might even be able to show the video of you going through on the hoverboard, going through your porch and avoiding all the furniture. You seem to do it relatively well. It's good that it's your house, that if you were doing this in your mother's house, you might get in more trouble. What do you consider your role to be? What is your role within this community?
Well, I don't know what my role is, but one of the things that I'm really trying to do is promote, mobility for wheelchair users. And one of the things that I found is that there is so much more that can be done. And it is that I think in general, all the mobility stuff that comes out for wheelchair users to me is at a pretty low level of performance. Their stuff is slow, it's not super maneuverable. And we as wheelchair users have come to accept a pretty low standard and thinking that we can't do better. And I'm trying to say, no, there's a lot more that we can do. I'm just like, I'm a hack. If I can hack stuff together, like what about people who really have lots of, mechanical knowledge and know-how and access, to technology and development? What could they come up with? And as a practical matter, they come up with stuff like, everyone raves about the smart drive, but to me, that is slow and low performance, and it costs $6,000. Able-bodied people can buy stuff for hundreds of dollars that it's so much higher performing. Why are we stuck with so, low performing and super expensive?
Right. So really to not be constrained by the present paradigm. I mean, it's interesting. on Facebook, I've looked at they have a history of wheelchair racing, and it's interesting to see like what these guys were doing back
Yeah,
in the day, where they were, where they were literally racing hospital chairs, where they were
right,
racing 60, 65 pound stainless steel E&J hospital chairs, and then they started getting, putting on a junior push ring so that you could effectively be in like fifth gear, but they still had, the speed wobbles, the shopping cart wobbles on their front casters, and then you get to, and you progress and you see some of the stuff now that is, you get some of the carbon fiber, you get the super aerodynamic kind of stuff, you get some of these incredible times and speeds and stuff like that. And I think we do need that paradigm shift. And some of it was, we're stuck in the paradigm shift, stuck by rules, by the paradigm shift, but also
right.
stuck by the industry, but also stuck by our thinking. And it sounds like what you're saying is that a lot of the technology is already out there.
Right, exactly. That's exactly my point. It already is, and it's cheap. Able-bodied technology is super cheap if you can tap into it. So, another thing I've been using is just a three-wheeled scooter. It's called a cycleboard. It's a lean to steer, which I can just hop on. And again, these are existing, things that are not meant for wheelchair users, but they're take slight adaptations. But if you can tap in to able-bodied, mass-produced, cheap consumer stuff, you can do a lot, and it's not limited. In other words, if you make it a wheelchair thing, it goes 5-6 miles an hour. That is slow,
And it's
right?
expensive. Yes.
And it's super expensive. I don't want to go that slow, and I don't want to pay that much. And here's the thing: I also like to do different things. I'm not looking for the one, and this is the thing that pisses me off about, people are like, oh, here's the one chair, it's going to do everything for you, right? I don't want one chair that can do everything for me. What I have to, because that would be boring. I like to do different things in different vehicles in different terrains. I like to switch it up. And so sometimes I like electric power and sometimes I don't, It just depends on what you're trying to do, right? I mean, that's the thing. Electrical assists are great, but I don't want to use it all the time. I want to use it sometimes for certain things and not for others. It just depends. So, I mean, what I'm trying to strive for is just, show people there's a lot of stuff that we can do if we start thinking this way, and also being more open. And I'm going to say, and don't shut down someone who comes up with an idea, because maybe it looks stupid at the time, but who knows what it could do in the future? Like, we don't know. So we should be, celebrating different stuff instead of saying, oh, that's dumb. Oh, someone's already got that. Like, why bother? Someone comes up with a new front wheel and they're like, oh, there's already a free wheel. Why are you doing that? Look up, you get on Amazon and you put out any product, you'll see hundreds of different variations of that product. But somehow in the disability world, if one thing already exists like that, people are like, well, why do that? There's another one out there. To me, that's just ridiculous. And I don't know why we stand for that.
Exactly, because we should continue to progress. The one thing I want to see before we go is, let's see the skimboard. This is pretty crazy. This is at Hampton Beach, I'm assuming, right?
This is actually at York Beach with Ant Surf.
Okay.
Helping me out, and yeah. So I said again, these are all set up with the same idea. You create a wheel well, you put it on a mobility device. This time the power is coming from some guy pulling me, so again, I wanted to try this out. There's so many things that can be done, in a chair using that wheelie thing. Some are more practical than others, but here's the thing, it does it matter if you're skimboarding or surfing? Like, the idea is movement, right? Fun movement. So who cares how you do it, as long as you have fun doing it. And also, to me, these are, and I'm going to say, for us, now that we're in our 50s, we got to keep stretching our brain, because if we don't, it's going to get hard, crusty, and, shrink. So, we need to do things that are keep trying to learn new things, you know? I mean, that's why I learned to juggle. It's the same thing. Like you keep trying to learn different things, and it keeps your brain flexible, you know? We don't want to get stuck just doing the same thing, because, you know, we're gonna lose our creativity.
I agree with you. And I think that you hit on some great points right there, because one is the idea of having fun. I mean, why are you doing this? Because I want to have a good time. You know, I mean, it's a challenge as well, but you want to have a good time. And that flexibility, that maintaining the flexibility in our brain flexibility and our kinesthetic flexibility, right? Our ability to move. It's not all the same movement, and it's nice to shock your body at times to force it to learn something else, to create a new set of skills that then we have an amazing ability to adapt. We figure out how to do things relatively quickly, but we have to force ourselves. We have to get out of our comfort part in order to continue to learn. And when I was doing some of the research on you beforehand, I was looking at it going, I've got to get going here. Like, Erik is doing some absolutely amazing things, and it's so easy to get caught in our comfort zone. I go out and ride on my hand cycle every day, you know, and it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing, but to do something else is really the cool part of stretching our brain. So thank you.
There are just some activities like skiing, like skateboarding, that lend themselves to an infinite amount of improvement. Right? You can never be too good. You just keep improving if you keep pushing it. But there are other things. You know, I was just using my braces today. You know, I use my braces, I don't know, a number of times a week, and I just walk in circles, right? And I've been doing this for, 30 odd years.
These are straight leg braces. Yep.
Yeah, leg braces with a walker. I am no better. And nothing improves. You know, I am just clunking along. It's all system 2. It's so slow. Right? There's no flow. There's no balance. There's none of everything that you can feel skiing. I'm not feeling on braces. You know, I'm just doing it to stand up. But what I'm saying is no improvement. No, it's not a complex motor skill that you can keep chunking and get better at. I'm just stuck where I'm at, you know? So it's great for me physiologically, right? It's great to stand up, but right. It's not a complex motor skill, and it's just not going to be.
Exactly. So let's let you out on this. What's next? I mean, you have a bit of this mad scientist kind of persona going. Is there something that's on the horizon?
I'm going to stack on my LAN board all my batteries. I think I get 12 of them, and I want to just see how far I can go. You know, I'm just going to turn it into a giant battery and then just go. And I'm actually, and I think that I can set clearly I can set a record, because nobody else, other than Evan, who is faster than me. I think if I get a lot of batteries, I can set a record for like the longest distance, certainly the longest wheelchair skateboarding distance, so I want to do that. I want to see how far I can go, because I think part of showing that a mobility thing is actually practical. It's a few things. One, how fast does it go, right? Like, we all care about speed, right? 20, 30 miles an hour, great. But, if you say you can go 50 miles, people are like, whoa, you can go 50 miles? Wow. 60 miles, 70 miles. I don't know how many miles I can go with 12 batteries. I'm going to figure that out. Maybe it's 100. I don't know. And then it's maneuverability, right? So if you've got all three, you have a practical thing: speed, right, distance, mobility. So,
will you do this as will you create a story around this? Will you do it as a fundraiser or something? Can we follow you?
I don't know. Sometimes to me, it's just a lot of effort. I just like to get my shit together and just do it, So maybe it will, maybe it won't. It just depends. A lot of times it's just easier just to do and not make a big deal about it. Just do it, and
there is that. If we can follow you, please let us know. We'll reach out to the other people who are out there, and so cool to see how you're kind of bending our imagination a little bit and forcing us to look at some things that we thought were static and really are dynamic, and changing it from that stationary set to active motion, and really cool. So keep up the great work. Thank you for joining us. It's great to see you after so long, and yeah, keep it up, man. Look forward to following you on Facebook, and everybody can follow you. Yeah.
Sounds great. All right. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.